Scottish independence, Nicola Sturgeon's folly. Welcome to Mark and Pete. Here's a thought.
An independent view. The clan that are dressed in a kilt are Scottish and ruggedly built, and many have the Gaelic lilt, dressed in tartan to the hilt. In a land where whisky is spilt, their bodies quickly begin to tilt. Then the thistles waver and then they wilt, knowing they're not English and full of guilt.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Well, when it comes to the independent subject, will Scotland ever get its way of having an independent referendum? Well, no, says the Supreme Court. Well, that was the ruling that was put forward in recent times. Yes, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has been campaigning to hold a referendum for many, many years, but has pushed again to have one in October 2023. Now, the court ruled unanimously that she does not have the power to do so because the issue is reserved to Westminster. And of course, the UK government has refused to grant any formal consent for a referendum. Now, what's interesting as well is that the court president, Lord Reid, said the laws that created the devolved Scottish Parliament in 1999 meant it did not have the power over areas of constitution, including the union between Scotland and England. Close repeat. I ask you, is this something that Nicola Sturgeon should be pursuing in the interest of Scotland, or maybe it is pure folly?
Well, I think it is folly. I don't think it's just a personal folly, though. I think that there's quite a movement caught up with it. But obviously, I say obviously, but I think not a majority. I mean, back in 2014, when they had the referendum, it wasn't a majority. And it doesn't look... Really, surveys that have been done show that there isn't that much of a change, that much of a movement. Although, because her party has that as part of its its main policy area. In fact, some would argue the only policy area. It seems to be the only thing they stand for. They're wedded to it, and they can argue. Oh, some people vote for us. It's for independence, where it can be just simply, well, they're the Scottish people. You know, it's like a tribal loyalty. And I think that's where the error comes in. I think it is a folly, believing that it's more popular than it is. And the financial situation, the economic situation, and international relations difficulties, and also problems, you know, of relationship with England if they're not part of the UK. I mean that altogether, I just think it's impractical.
Well, it's impractical on a number of levels, and let's cover them. I just want to say that Lord Reid continued when he was giving his address, and he said when the ruling was made, a lawfully held referendum would have important political consequences relating to the Union and the United Kingdom Parliament. But here's the other thing. It would have overwhelming influence if an independent referendum did go ahead. And let's even make the assumption that Scotland did vote to become independent. What would this mean for Scotland? Culturally, and think about this, folks, they are so different from mainland Europe. Yes, folks, different from the Germans, different from the French, different from the Dutch, different from many of the different union members. How on earth would that ever really work? Here's the other thing as well. Similarly, again, adopting the euro. Similarly, again, adopting some of the European policies. Similarly, again, folks, how is that going to work on the borders of trade between Scotland and England? And of course, here's the other thing which would really cause some major issues. Where is the border? Let's put that in place. How's that going to practically work? And here's the other thing as well. There are many English people living in Scotland, many Scottish people living in England and various other places. I think that it's impractical also on a level that I'm going to come from a commercial perspective. We've also seen, dare I say, not a different subject, but we've also seen, obviously, on the borders of Ireland, Northern Ireland, etc. I can see another issue being faced there. So I think economically it would actually impact Scotland even harder. So if you think, folks, in Scotland, that this at this moment in time that there is perhaps not enough investment, from Westminster, yes, I would probably agree with that. But can you imagine this being part of mainland Europe, isolated from England? I just don't see that working at all. I certainly wouldn't be considering investing in Scotland, and I don't think many other businesses would either. The only thing that I could think that they could do, but I just don't think it would work, and I think there are many logistical reasons, social reasons, and let alone weather reasons, that if you made it a tax haven in some way, but I just don't think it would be as appealing to businesses. So closing with Pete, my take is this, is that I'm concerned that we have a Scottish minister who is actually pushing this agenda and seems to be only set on this agenda, when if I was somebody living in Scotland, I'd be thinking, please focus on the things that matter. We have an economic challenge. We have health challenges with the infrastructure on the NHS. We have other challenges, etc. Should her priorities be somewhere else?
Yes, they should be somewhere else. I mean, Nicola Sturgeon has really been a very incompetent, ineffective leader in many areas. She was really sold on the lockdowns and other measures against the pandemic, which now seem to have been mistaken. Of course, the rest of the UK did as well, but she really went for it, as did Wales, of course. This was a big mistake. She has been seen to be unconvincing in in the education system, in health, and she just concentrates on this one issue. A cynic would say, in order to cover over all the cracks, because she's getting support out of loyalty to the nation, Scotland, when actually independence from Britain isn't in the best interests of the nation. But you can get people to support you because, well, this is Scottish. It's right there in the name. I think it is the branding. I think that's why she goes for it. That is her branding. There may also be another issue. Once you build up support like that on a particular issue, it's very difficult to let it go, because then you may well lose their support, and their support is what keeps her in place. Her playing to her base. She has to keep it on, keep them on board by sticking to this one issue.
I've got something which is controversial, but I'm going to raise it, and I think it's really important. Now, before I do so, she did say, when the Supreme Court ruling came in, she said, this is a hard pill for any supporter of independence, and surely indeed for any supporter of democracy to swallow. And she went on to say that she told the media that the referendum remained her preferred option. But in the absence of an agreement, the SNP, that's the party that she represents, would use the next general election as a de facto referendum in an attempt to demonstrate that the majority of people in Scotland support independence. Well, yes. However, interesting, there's one word that I want to bring up. It's called treason. The term of treason is the crime betraying one's country, especially in attempting to either kill or overthrow the sovereign or the government. Isn't this by de facto to try and break up the United Kingdom against the Constitution, against the will of those who are on this fair land? I'm surprised that nobody's actually thinking of it in a different light. Now, it may be that, ironically, people say, oh, that's a bit extreme. No, it isn't. Surely breaking up the United Kingdom is against the interests of all parties. And I really do not see now how this agenda is in anyone's interest, bearing in mind that a massive amount of effort went through the decisions in recent times. I know we've been through lots of elections, but remember the Brexit vote, folks? Yes. Well, Scottish people, I know, overall wanted to stay. But look, at the end of the day, we were one collective. And we took the decision to do that. And we took the decision as voters of this fair land collectively to come out of Europe. And we should now work towards that, build on that, and not go back. My worry is that by constantly bringing this subject up, I can actually see that it's just going to derail all of the other efforts from Westminster to Westminster to be able to even think about building relationships, let alone considering investing. So think about this, folks. If you are in Westminster now and you're thinking, are the Scottish people genuinely going to do this? Why would you invest? Why would you invest your money? Yeah. Now, to me, if I'm, and I will be honest, I think, folks, yes, I think you can probably tell from our accents, we are not from Scotland. Pete and I are not from Scotland. But I think it is in our interest to invest in Scotland. Let's say it again, folks. Yes. I think we should invest. And unfortunately, I'll be even bolder by saying Westminster has failed Scotland. I have no doubt about that. I completely support the reasons that they have called upon politically, and it's got to this stage. But what I don't think needs to happen is to break away and become an independent state. I think that would be damaging on all fronts.
Yes, I think it has let down Scotland and other areas of the UK as well.
But it's an act of betrayal, surely.
Yeah, but you can't. They can't leave, even though they hate the Westminster politicians, and neither can you, Nicola Sturgeon. You can't take the country with you, and it wouldn't be the same thing. You see, the model for leaving that she's put forward is to leave Britain and join the EU. Well, if they had problems with the way that the Westminster rules from a distance, they're going to have even more of a problem being just a minnow in the European Union pool. They will be pushed around. They will not receive preferential treatment. When Britain as a whole was there, we were a big player. It was very different. We were a net contributor to the EU. So I think that it's just pie in the sky thinking. It is so ridiculous that it's difficult. It's almost difficult to deal with it because there is no logic in it. Yeah. Well, you can say, well, where's the logic? There's the emotion. No, the emotion is loyalty to Scotland, but that does not necessarily mean independence. You could look at it another way. England isn't independent of Scotland either. No. Oh. Maybe England would like to leave Scotland and be done with
it. There is that question, looking at the other way. Exactly. And should we even have that vote? I mean, that's one of the questions that has been brought up. No, so here's
English
the point.
Independence.
The independent referendum in 2014 asked voters of Scotland, and of course the result was 55% to 45% said that they wanted to be part of the United Kingdom. Now, okay, that's not that long ago, really, in the scale of our history, folks.
No.
And so, how many times, Nicola, do you want to keep, having this where, Hollywood says, okay, we're going to go for another independence referendum until we get what we want. But here's the ultimate point. Should we, even if it did happen, have the vote as people in Northern Ireland, people in Wales, and people in England also have the vote too? Do they go independent? Do they not go independent? That does open up a bigger question. It's not just necessarily about those who are actually Scottish. And I think that that's something that we should consider as we go forward.
Yes, I think that we can leave the subject now, but hand it over to our listeners and say, look, what do you think? Is this just pie in the sky thinking from Nicola Sturgeon and her allies, or is there any reason why Scotland should leave apart from this foolish sentimentality? I say foolish because Scotland can be proudly Scotland without leaving the UK.